Hi, I'm Alex Carter. Welcome back to the Government Report. This installment of the Government Report will make your hair stand up. Let's get to it.
Thank you, Alex. Cannabis has one of the most dramatic stories in human history. For thousands of years, it was a trusted medicine, a sacred ritual herb, and even a vital crop for making clothes and ropes. Ancient healers, emperors, and everyday people relied on it. No one saw it as dangerous. But fast forward to today, and cannabis has been called a gateway drug, banned worldwide, and locked behind prison bars. So what happened? How did something so widely accepted turn into a global villain? The answer is a wild journey, full of political schemes, racist propaganda, underground empires, and a modern fight for freedom. In this installment of Government Report, we will tell you the epic tale of cannabis, how it fell from grace, survived in the shadows, and is now making an explosive comeback. From ancient temples to street corners, from government labs to billion-dollar dispensaries, cannabis has been on the ultimate roller coaster, and its story isn't over yet. Buckle up. We're diving into the darkest and most surprising chapters of its past. The origins of cannabis. Cannabis didn't start as a drug. It was one of humanity's oldest allies. For over 12,000 years, this plant has been integral to human history, not as a controversial substance, but as a versatile, essential tool. Its origins lie in Central Asia, in the areas now known as Mongolia and southern Siberia, where ancient peoples first discovered its potential. In its early days, cannabis wasn't mysterious or taboo, it was practical. Its fibers were used for ropes and cloths, vital materials for survival. The seeds, rich in nutrients, provided sustenance. It may have even played a role in rituals, though much of its use remains shrouded in mystery. Cannabis was a staple, like wheat or barley, seamlessly integrated into society for both practical and spiritual purposes. There was no stigma, no fear. But as time passed, perceptions changed. Over the centuries, cannabis evolved from a helpful resource into a symbol of rebellion and controversy. Cannabis in ancient civilizations. In the early days of human civilization, cannabis was far more than just a plant. It was a powerful tool in medicine, spirituality, and culture. In China, dating back to 2800 BCE, Emperor Shen Nung's medical texts were some of the first to recognize cannabis for its medicinal properties. Shen Nung, known as the father of traditional Chinese medicine, mentioned the plant in his Pharmacopoeia, highlighting its ability to alleviate pain. This early recognition set the stage for cannabis to be embraced across the world as a valuable medicinal resource. It wasn't just a cure for ailments, but a symbol of natural healing that transcended generations. Meanwhile, in Egypt, cannabis found its place in the realm of spirituality. The ancient Egyptians, known for their elaborate burial rituals, used cannabis in religious ceremonies, with traces of the plant even found in mummies. Cannabis was considered a sacred substance, potentially used to aid in the afterlife or as an offering to the gods. Its inclusion in such rites speaks to the reverence with which it was regarded by these early civilizations. In India, the connection between cannabis and spirituality is deeply ingrained in its culture. The Vedas, the oldest sacred texts of Hinduism, mention soma, a plant believed to possess divine properties. While the exact identity of soma remains a subject of debate, many scholars believe it was a reference to cannabis. Beyond its spiritual significance, cannabis was also integral to Ayurvedic medicine, where it was used to treat a variety of ailments and enhance well-being. Even in the Greco-Roman world, cannabis was not overlooked. The famous Greek historian Herodotus recorded accounts of the Scythians, a nomadic people, who would inhale the fumes of burning hemp seeds during their religious ceremonies. This act was not merely for recreational purposes, but was intertwined with their rites and traditions, helping them to achieve heightened spiritual experiences. The dark turn, the demonization of cannabis. You might wonder, how did a plant once revered for its medicinal benefits become a symbol of fear and controversy? Well, there is a big story behind it. In the 1800s, cannabis was not only accepted but widely used for medicinal purposes. Queen Victoria herself reportedly used cannabis tinctures to alleviate menstrual pain, and it was a common ingredient in many medical remedies of the time. Its therapeutic properties were recognized globally, and it was celebrated for its versatility. Cannabis was a part of the everyday life of many people, from pain relief to improving appetite, and even as an aid in sleep. This botanical remedy was not just for the wealthy or the elite, but was accessible to anyone seeking relief from physical ailments. The plant was a staple in apothecaries, a trusted ally in health. Yet the shadows of public perception would soon begin to darken its once stellar reputation. As the new century unfolded, however, cannabis found itself increasingly associated with a different social element. The early 1900s saw a significant rise in immigration, particularly from Mexico and the Caribbean. With this influx came the recreational use of cannabis in social circles, especially among these immigrant communities. This cultural shift sparked the birth of a new narrative, one crafted out of fear and prejudice. In the face of rising immigration, cannabis began to be linked with violent foreigners in a campaign fueled by racial and ethnic tensions. It wasn't long before cannabis, once a medicine and a common herb, became synonymous with criminality and danger, despite no evidence supporting such claims. By the time the 1930s rolled around, the stage was set for what would become the most infamous chapter in cannabis history, the era of reefer madness. This period saw a widespread propaganda campaign led by films, newspapers, and sensationalized headlines that painted cannabis as a killer drug. These were not just exaggerations, they were calculated efforts to manipulate public perception and incite fear. The plant that had once been a remedy was now depicted as the cause of insanity, violence, and moral decay. This demonization reached its peak with the 1936 film Reefer Madness, which portrayed cannabis as a gateway to chaos and destruction, framing it as a direct threat to the fabric of society. The war on cannabis. The moment cannabis was declared illegal, it wasn't about health. It was about control. In 1937, the U.S. government enacted the Marijuana Tax Act, a piece of legislation that effectively banned cannabis. On the surface, it seemed like a simple regulation to address public health concerns, but beneath it, a more sinister truth lurked. The law was a result of heavy lobbying by powerful industries like cotton, timber, and pharmaceuticals, all of whom saw cannabis as a direct threat to their profits. Cannabis was versatile. Its fibers were a competitor to cotton, its seeds offered potential as a cheaper alternative to oil, and its medicinal properties threatened the pharmaceutical monopoly. The real enemy wasn't the plant, but the economic empire it could potentially dismantle. Fast forward to the 1970s, and Richard Nixon's war on drugs took hold. With a stroke of a pen, cannabis was classified as a Schedule I drug, on par with heroin in terms of danger and addictiveness. This decision was not based on scientific evidence, but rather fueled by Nixon's political agenda. Cannabis, once seen as a harmless herb with medicinal benefits, was now painted as a menace to society. The war on drugs wasn't just a campaign against drugs. It was a social and racial battle, disproportionately affecting minority communities. Black and Latino neighborhoods bore the brunt of harsh law enforcement policies, with millions arrested, jailed, and subjected to the criminal justice system for something legal just a few decades prior. The US's actions did not stop at its borders. As a global superpower, the country pressured nations across the world to follow suit and criminalize cannabis. The ripple effect was swift and wide. Countries, once embracing cannabis for its medical and industrial value, began enacting draconian laws that mirrored America's stance. What followed was a global domino effect. Cannabis became a symbol of rebellion, and simultaneously, a tool of control in the hands of governments around the world. Cannabis in the black market era. When cannabis went underground, it didn't disappear, it thrived. The very act of pushing it into the shadows gave rise to something far more potent than just illicit transactions. Prohibition didn't just hide cannabis. It fueled the rise of a black market that changed the fabric of society in ways few could have predicted. The demand for cannabis didn't dwindle with its criminalization. It exploded, giving birth to powerful cartels, organized crime, and an entire counterculture that would define a generation. As the 1960s rolled into the 1970s, cannabis became an essential part of the social fabric for millions. It was no longer just a plant. It had evolved into a symbol of rebellion. Cartels and underground networks, driven by the lucrative trade in cannabis, grew into massive criminal empires. The black market cannabis trade became a major source of income for organized crime syndicates that used the profits to fund an array of illegal activities. These cartels didn't just sell cannabis. They shaped a dangerous new reality, where power and profit were intricately tied to the supply of a once legal plant. Violence, turf wars, and corruption followed as the black market took control, spreading across borders and into the farthest corners of society. Meanwhile, in the counterculture of the 1960s and 70s, cannabis became more than just a drug. It was a lifestyle. The hippie movement, intertwined with music festivals like Woodstock and the rise of jazz musicians, was the perfect stage for cannabis to become iconic. For many, the plant was a symbol of freedom, an escape from the rigid societal norms of the time. Musicians and artists found inspiration in its haze, and the cultural significance of cannabis flourished. With the rise of stoner culture, cannabis became the anthem of rebellion, and its usage was no longer just about getting high. It was about challenging authority, embracing individuality, and creating a space for freedom of expression. In response to the mounting pressure of law enforcement and the increasing danger of getting caught, cannabis cultivation took a turn towards secrecy. The 1970s saw the birth of indoor growing operations, where growers turned to hydroponic methods to keep their crops hidden from prying eyes. In remote locations, hidden in the basements of suburban homes or deep in the forests, the underground world of cannabis cultivation thrived. These secret operations became more sophisticated, evolving into complex and efficient production systems. They weren't just growing weed, they were pioneering methods to evade law enforcement and push the limits of what was possible in the hidden world of cannabis. From prohibition to legalization, the impossible happened. Cannabis came back from the shadows. Once vital in many cultures, it was demonized and criminalized for decades. The shift began in 1996 when California passed Proposition 215, the first U.S. medical marijuana law. This historic crack in the wall allowed open discussion of cannabis as medicine, no longer just a drug, but a legitimate therapeutic option. By 2012, the momentum surged. Colorado and Washington became the first states to legalize recreational cannabis, a cultural breakthrough that moved the conversation from fringe to mainstream. Legalization sparked national debate and challenged decades of war on drugs policy. As laws changed, so did the market. Street dealers gave way to corporate dispensaries and regulated businesses. Cannabis emerged from the underground, becoming a booming, multi-billion-dollar global industry. Why the delay? After 80 years of prohibition's social, political, and economic fallout, governments could no longer deny reality. Medicinal benefits were clear. Prohibition had failed. Public opinion shifted, and with it, the narrative. Cannabis was no longer the villain. It was entering a new era of healing and recreation. The modern cannabis movement. The journey of cannabis has never been smooth, and as legalization spreads, a new question arises. Now that it's legal, what's next? The battle isn't over. The real challenge lies in how we integrate it into society, manage its social and economic impact, and unlock its full potential. Recent medical breakthroughs have cast cannabis in a new light. CBD, the non-psychoactive compound, is gaining attention for treating epilepsy, PTSD, and chronic pain. For many, it's a game changer, offering relief where traditional medicine failed. But can this medical wave serve the greater good, or will corporate interests take over? Big Pharma is moving in fast. The profit potential of cannabis-derived treatments is massive. Yet, as corporations dominate the market, many worry the plant's healing powers will be locked behind high prices and monopolies. This has sparked a battle between grassroots advocates and big business. Will cannabis stay accessible or become just another corporate product? The social justice side is impossible to ignore. The war on drugs hit marginalized communities hardest. With legalization comes a call to expunge records and offer restitution. As more regions legalize cannabis, the push for justice, both social and economic, can't be avoided. The future of cannabis is as uncertain as its past. With psychedelics gaining traction and global legalization on the rise, cannabis could redefine medicine and recreation. But when things go mainstream, their essence is often lost. Will cannabis rise as a symbol of healing and freedom, or fall to profit-driven repetition of the past? Only time will tell. The story of cannabis is still unfolding. While it's being legalized in more places and used for medical benefits, there are still challenges ahead. Will it stay true to its roots and be a source of healing, or will big businesses take control? Only time will tell. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the history of cannabis. The tale isn't over yet, and there's still much more to discover about this fascinating plant. Back to you, Alex.
That was eye-opening. I'll see you in the next installment of the Government Report. I'm Alex Carter.